Comment, like, subscribe. The bell keeps you notified. It helps the show thrive. Gigantic robots from outer space that can change into a variety of vehicles, gadgets, and mechanical dinosaurs are probably the last place you'd expect to find the Latin language being used. But here's the thing, the incredibly popular Transformers franchise of toys, films, comics, and TV series is littered with all kinds of names that are inspired by the Latin language and uses words of Latin origin. For example, there are names like Ultra Magnus, Minimus Ambus, Solus Prime, Abominus, Impactor Major, and perhaps most noticeably, the name of the most well-known and beloved Transformer, the mighty leader of the Autobots, Optimus Prime. The two words that make up this name are distinctly Latin, with Optimus meaning best and Prime meaning of highest importance or of highest quality. So together, these two Latin words come together to mean the most important and best, which is a fitting name for the heroic leader of any narrative, albeit a tad egotistical. At their best, many of these names could slot in neatly with members of the Roman Senate, or as part of a Roman legion, and no one would really bat an eyelid. And at their worst, they sound reminiscent of, say, Pig Latin, or someone making up Latin versions of English words. These Latin-inspired names were not initially the case, however. In fact, these toys are not even called Transformers at all to begin with. The series has its origin in the nation of Japan, with a series of toys made by a company called Takara Toys, which launched in the year 1980. These robots could transform into vehicles were called Diaclones and were a spin-off of one of Takara's other toy lines called Microman. Then in 1982, Takara released another line of robots that could turn into cars too. The American toy company of Hasbro found these transforming robot toys in Japan and saw the potential they could have in the West, so licensed them out from Takara Toys to sell them in the States and beyond. This meant that Hasbro didn't actually have to bother with creating toys. They would just see what Takara could create and license it out to the rest of the world. While they didn't have to think about creating the toys themselves, what they did have to think about was the branding of these toys. American kids and Japanese kids have different tastes. How would they make American children want these toys? Part of this was rebranding them as Transformers. Despite that being the name they are so linked with now, it took some persuasion from Hasbro to go with it. The name came to Hasbro via the Griffin Bakel advertising agency, who were hired to help market these toys from Japan. Hasbro's initial issue with this name was the link that the term Transformer has with electricity. To this day, a Transformer is still a device used to change the voltage flow in a power grid. Hasbro feared that this name would make people think that these toys had to be powered via electricity to change form. Luckily, however, the name Transformer won out and the rest is history. So much so that even Takara dropped their original Diaclone branding and started naming them Transformers too. Though despite using the Transformers name, some of the characters have completely different names in Japanese. Though weirdly for some reason, many of the Japanese names of the characters are actually English words. The best example is the fact that in Japan, Optimus Prime is called Convoy, or how Bumblebee is just called Bumble, or how Jazz is called Meister. Though to really sell the toys to American children, you need a cool story and cool characters to go along with them. This most famously took the form of the 1984 animated series, which was seen by many as just a 30-minute advert for the toys. However, along with the cartoon, there was also a comic book series, produced by none other than Marvel Comics. The initial story treatment for the first 4 issues of this comic book series laid out the groundwork for much of the initial Transformers lore which we all know today. This included many of the names we have for the robots today too. This initial treatment was concocted by 2 men by the name of Denny O'Neil and Jim Shooter. Jim actually has a blog and much of the information in this video has come from it, as well as comments from other avid Transformers fans in his blog posts. Though it is widely seen that Denny O'Neil was actually the one to come up with many of the Latin names, including being credited with the creation of the name Optimus Prime. However, he didn't create these names out of his own choice, rather he was demanded to from up on high. Later in the comics run, another guy called Bob Budanowski took over as writer, and in a 2004 interview, he spoke about the Latin name influence, saying that we should give Denny O'Neil credit for that. He started it by naming Optimus Prime. Generally, Hasbro wanted more literal names for most of the toys, but for some of the really major toys, they preferred names with more grandeur to them, so they pushed me to follow in the vein of Op Prime on those. I think I named Fortress Maximus and possibly Omega Supreme. So the origins of these Latin names were initially a demand from Hasbro, which Denny O'Neil worked with, then Bob Budiansky and people who worked on the creative for Transformers ever since followed suit on. What we can gather from this quote, however, is that Hasbro didn't specifically demand that Latin be used, just that the more important characters have more grand names. It was Denny who decided that grandeur meant using Latin, and it's easy to see why. Latin for so long has been seen as this highly respected, ancient, prestigious language, used in places like the Christian Church, or the royal family, or even on American currency. So using elements of the language to shape the names of the more prestigious characters in the series made logical sense. Latin, however, wasn't the only language used in the creation of Transformers names. Some Transformers have taken influence from the Greek and Hebrew languages too, which are also seen as ancient, prestigious languages. Greek Transformer names include Alpha Trion, Andromeda, Cassiopeia, and most noticeably, the name Optimus Prime had before he became the Autobot leader, Orion Pax. And likewise, we do have a couple Hebrew names too, including Ariel and Abel, though as Bob Budiansky said, these kinds of Latin/ancient names were reserved for the more important characters. For everyone else, Hasbro wanted literal, easy to understand names, and oh boy do we have many of those. A lot of the names simply come from cool sounding words, which somewhat relate to the characters, such as Starscream, Ratchet, and so on. Even the name Megatron is simply an adaptation of Megaton, with Tron thrown in to make it sound more robotic. Though I must admit, as a kid of the 90s, Gen 1 Transformers didn't resonate too much with me, I was a bit too young for it. I however was raised on Beast Wars, and oh man, as much as I love this series, its characters, and its jank CGI, some of the names are painfully obvious. In this series, the robots turned into animals instead of vehicles, and the majority of their names are just slight alterations of the animals they change into, such as the Cheetah Transformer being called Cheetor, the Rhino Transformer being called RHINOX, and the Tarantula Transformer being called Tarantulas. Though I must admit I'm a big fan of the name Optimus Primal. He's the good guy leader in this series, and his name is not only a play on Optimus Prime, but Primal reflects the animalistic nature of the series. Though, back to those Latin names, while we know why they were chosen from a behind the scenes perspective, I am wondering how we could explain the use of Latin names within the lore of Transformers itself. Like, these guys are meant to be from a distant planet called Cybertron. How on earth would Cybertron end up having a language so similar to Latin? Well, perhaps I'm looking at this from the wrong way. Maybe in the world of Transformers, these names aren't Latin, but rather the Latin language was inspired by the names of these robots. In some versions of the Transformers narrative, these robots have been on Earth for many, many years. Perhaps some ancient Romans interacted with these robots, and the language these humans spoke became influenced by the robots and their names, helping shape Latin to us humans. Conversely, going back to the dumb names found in Beast Wars. Beast Wars is actually set in a prehistoric Earth after some Transformers from the far-off future went back in time. Maybe they didn't name themselves after the animals, but instead these animals are named after these robots once ancient humans interacted with them. Though then again in the first episode of the series, you hear a couple of them take on their new names. But actually, wait a minute. These Transformers were from the future, so would have known these animal names already, so named themselves after them. But then humans would have adapted the robot names into the actual animal names. But the animals only had those names because of the robots, who took those names from the animals. And the animals took those names from the robots. But the robots were named after the animals, but the animals were named after... Oh gosh, I think I've accidentally just uncovered a Beast Wars animal name paradox. Has anyone talked about this before? You know, I'm declaring myself as the inventor of this fan theory. Cool. But speaking of fan theories, all that last segment was pretty much that, my own hypothesizing, though maybe there is some validity in it all. While I enjoy Transformers, I'm in no way an expert on the franchise, and my production schedule doesn't allow me to really dive into the world and become a master on all things Autobots and Decepticons. So if anyone watching knows a lot more than myself, then that would be amazing. I know there are some huge Transformers fans out there with those incredible collections of the toys, which I'm insanely jealous jealous about. Perhaps one day I'll have the space and money to indulge myself in Transformers properly. However, just talking about them here on my channel is enough for me. And speaking of talking about things here on the channel, the day before the release of this video marks 7 years since the release of the first ever Name Explain video. It has been a wild ride to say the least, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who is still watching and puts up with me talking about everything and anything, whether it be like countries like we kicked off this channel with, or fictional transforming robots. I just want to take a moment to thank you all for allowing me to do this dream job of mine. Anyway, this video topic was suggested by BJ Windsor over on my Patreon. Every Wednesday I put up a video request post over on my Patreon for my awesome patrons to leave video ideas on. I then pick one of those ideas to be turned into a video the following Wednesday. So if you have a great idea for a Name Explain video and wish to enjoy Name Explain videos ad-free as well as get exclusive content, then why not support the channel on Patreon? It takes just $1 a month to help the channel in a huge way and gets you all of these amazing benefits. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, and the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos. $2 a month gets you all that, plus your name here with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.